Welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast about life, love, loss, and the truths we discover along the way. Together, we'll explore the struggles that shape us, the lessons we carry, and the hope that keeps us moving forward. This is more than stories. It's honesty. It's healing. It's real. Let's get started. And now your host, Glen Nunes.
Welcome back to Cracked Open. This is the podcast where we take the complicated, painful, confusing, sometimes beautiful parts of life and lay them out honestly on the table and try to make sense of them together. So I'm your host, Glen Nunes. Thank you for being back. And if this is your first time, thank you guys for tuning in to Cracked Open. Thank you for sharing and following and commenting. It really helps in subscribing. I appreciate it. Today's topic, it's a big one. We're going to be talking about something people say all the time, but I'm not sure we really stop and think deeply about it enough. How do you actually show someone you love them? Not through words, not just through social media posts, and not through promises, but through actions, through time, through presence, through consistency, through forgiveness, through sacrifice, through patience, through listening, through simply being there when somebody needs you. And honestly, this topic hit me differently this week because life has been throwing a lot at me lately. Some loss, reflection, friendships, people struggling, people grieving, people fighting battles that nobody else sees. And it's made me realize something. A lot of people around us are silently carrying heavy things while pretending they're okay. So today, I just want to have a real conversation about what love actually looks like in everyday life. And I think one of the biggest problems in the world right now is that a lot of people say words like "I love you," but their actions tell a completely different story. They just throw their word around. People say, "I'm here for you, I care about you, I'll never leave, I got your back," all these things. But when life gets uncomfortable and suddenly they disappear, they stop checking in, they stop listening, they stop showing up, or they give people just enough attention to keep them emotionally hanging on without ever truly being present. And honestly, I think there are a lot of people listening right now who feel invisible. People sitting alone in apartments, in cars, at work, in their home, lying awake at night, wondering why people who claim to care about them suddenly became total strangers. You can't pour from an empty cup forever. So right now, I'm just trying to simplify things a little, protect my peace, connect with God as much as I can, and figure out what a healthy balance actually looks like moving forward. Again, if it's your first time listening, my name is Glen Nunes, and welcome to Cracked Open. My mind has been all over the place lately. As I said, it's been so heavy. There's been a lot of loss around me, a lot of emotional exhaustion, and a lot of reflection. And honestly, I almost did not record this episode. I usually have 3 or 4 of these recorded in the bank. And as of right now, I only have 1. So when this one comes out, it'll be 2 weeks from today. When you hear this, it'll be like 2 weeks from now when this is recorded. But sometimes the best conversations come when we're not pretending to have everything figured out. So today, I want to talk about something that somebody actually wrote down for me a while back. And she wrote down a couple of ideas for episodes. And my last episode was called How to Say Nice Things. And the second one she had wrote down was How to Show Someone You Love Them. That's what the second thing that she had wrote down and said it would be a good podcast idea. Sometimes love is patience. Sometimes it's sacrifice. Sometimes it's endurance. Sometimes it's boundaries. And sometimes placing someone in God's hands because you realize you can't save everybody yourself. And one scripture that's been speaking to me lately is Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that verse. Guarding your heart doesn't mean becoming cold, bitter, angry, or shutting the world out. It actually means protecting the wellspring of who you are so pain and disappointment don't poison your entire spirit. Because if we allow ourselves to become crushed in spirit, eventually we don't have love left to give anybody. So today, this episode is called How to Show Someone You Love Them. And right here, I want to go back and talk about what the spirit is and what the soul is and all that stuff that I was thinking about the other day that I put in my notes. And I always say this is not a religious podcast. I do follow the biblical teachings a lot. And it has a lot to do with my research and all my podcasts. But today's episode, How to Show Someone You Love Them, is a very important topic. Last episode, we talked about saying nice things. But today, I'm going to talk about action because love isn't always just words. Okay, sometimes it's presence. Sometimes it's patience. It's sacrifice, it's boundaries. Sometimes it's learning when to let go. One thing I did realize, though, preparing this episode, is that sometimes when you're emotionally exhausted, we start to save everybody while slowly losing ourselves in the process. And honestly, I think a lot of people listening to this probably know what that feels like. Sometimes loving someone becomes confusing because you don't know where love ends and self-destruction begins. You keep trying harder. You hold on tighter, you pray harder, fixing more, explaining more, sacrificing more, and eventually you wake up emotionally drained, wondering, at what point did I stop taking care of my own spirit? And that's why Proverbs says, guard your heart, not because God wants us cold, but because he knows a crushed spirit changes people. And honestly, I'm learning this in real time, man. I've been on a roller coaster for a while now. And those of you who have listened to my podcast through the heartbreak one, confusion, hope, disappointment, loss, trying to understand what real love is and what it's supposed to look like. Because a lot of us think showing love means chasing harder, fixing people, carrying everybody's burdens, staying in unhealthy situations, or refusing to let go no matter how much it destroys us. But I'm starting to realize that isn't how God shows love. Sometimes love is truth. Sometimes love steps back. Sometimes love protects the heart. And sometimes love means trusting God enough to stop trying to control everything ourselves. And I think one of the hardest things in life is learning the difference between carrying love and carrying pain. I mentioned something pertaining to this in my last episode about the difference between praying and surrendering. Because sometimes we physically leave situations, but mentally we never leave them at all. And I heard a story recently that really hit me. 2 monks were traveling together, a senior monk and a younger monk. They came to a river where a woman was standing there unable to cross because the current was too strong. So even though their vows forbidded them from touching the woman, the older monk picked her up, carried her across the river safely, set her down, and continued walking. The younger monk was furious about it the entire journey. Finally, hours later, he exploded and he said, "How could you do that? You know our vows." The older monk calmly looked at him and he said, "Brother, I set that woman down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" And honestly, that story convicted me because I think a lot of us do that in life. We carry old heartbreak, old anger, old betrayal, old guilt, old resentment, old conversations, old people. We replay things over and over in our heads long after the moment is past. And eventually, the weight of what we keep carrying starts crushing our spirit. And that's why Proverbs says, guard your heart. Not because God wants us hard, but because he knows how dangerous it is when pain starts living inside us permanently. And one of the stories I kept thinking about while preparing this episode was the story of the prodigal son. The father loved his son so deeply, but he also let him walk away. He didn't chase him into the pig pen. He didn't force him to change. He didn't control him. And he didn't destroy himself trying to rescue somebody who wasn't ready to listen. He kept the light on. He kept the door open. But he trusted God enough to let the journey play out. And I think a lot of us struggle with that because when we love somebody deeply, We think love means chasing harder and fixing everything and carrying all the pain and sacrificing our peace and holding on no matter how much damage it's doing to us. But Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That verse isn't telling us to become cold or bitter. It pretty much tells us to protect our spirit and our heart. Because the truth is, you cannot truly love somebody well if you're completely destroying yourself in the process. Sometimes showing love means saying, I love you enough to let you go, and I love myself enough to stop being crushed. And honestly, this has been hitting me really hard because I've been surrounded by so much loss, sickness, heartbreak, and reflection lately. I've heard so many stories lately. I know someone who's going through a terrible heartbreak right now. And I know somebody who just lost their aunt. And I know somebody who just lost their father-in-law this morning. And I know somebody who's been told they have less than a month to live. And that's Billy. And I'm going to talk about him briefly in this podcast. And his story is he's been told he's got stage 4 cancer. And he's literally got probably weeks to go. We're hoping it's months or longer. We don't know. God's the one that knows. My nonprofit Music Gives is preparing a benefit day celebration of life for Billy. It's going to be called Billy's Bash. And preparing for Billy's Bash, seeing somebody fight for their life and reconnecting with people from my past, hearing stories from friends who are grieving, it makes you realize how fragile life really is. And I think one of the saddest things in life is how often people wait too long to show love. We wait too long to call people, too long to forgive people, too long to encourage people, too long to tell somebody we appreciate them, too long to put our pride down, too long to just be present. And then suddenly life changes. I've also realized something else. Pain can make us dangerous if we're not careful. Not dangerous physically, but spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. Pain can make us bitter. It can make us cold. It can make us stop trusting people. It can make us push everybody away before they can hurt us. It can make us lose our drive and our desire to do things and wanting to just stop everything. It's a very dangerous thing. And honestly, I've been fighting that myself, but I don't want pain to turn me into somebody who stops loving people altogether. I think the challenge is learning how to love people wisely without losing yourself in the process. There's another verse and blessing I came across recently that really stayed with me. It's called the Mizpah blessing from Genesis 31:49. The Lord watched between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. And what really stuck with me about that is the meaning behind it. It's a prayer for when you can't be there anymore, when you can't control the situation, when you can't fix somebody, when you can't protect them from their choices, when all you can really do is place them in God's hands and trust Him with the outcome. And honestly, that's hard, very hard. It could be one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life because human nature wants the control. We want answers. We want people to change when we want them to change. We want pain to stop immediately. But faith doesn't always work that way. Sometimes faith is saying, God, I love this person deeply, but I can't carry this anymore by myself. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is pray for somebody from a distance instead of destroying yourself trying to save them. And that doesn't mean you stop loving them. That doesn't mean that at all. Sometimes loving somebody means keeping the light on, keeping compassion for them in your heart, praying for them, honestly praying for them, hoping the best for them, but also finally giving yourself permission to breathe again. Because there's a difference between loving somebody and losing yourself trying to rescue them. And I think a lot of us struggle with all this because letting go feels like giving up, especially when you really love someone. We tell ourselves if we try harder, say the right thing, hold on tighter, maybe things will finally change. But sometimes we become so focused on saving somebody else that we completely lose ourselves in the process. And that pain is real. But today, It isn't about bitterness. It's not about attacking people. It's not about becoming cold towards the world. This conversation is really about understanding what real love actually looks like in everyday life, because love without actions eventually just become noise. Real love has weight to it. Sometimes love is showing up for somebody when it's inconvenient. Sometimes it's listening when you're exhausted. Sometimes it's checking on somebody you know is struggling mentally. Sometimes it's being patient with somebody who's grieving. Sometimes it's admitting you were wrong, which a lot of people can't do. Sometimes it's forgiveness. Sometimes it's sacrifice. And honestly, sometimes the greatest way to show someone you love them is simply making them feel like they matter in a world that's constantly making people feel forgotten. And that's what we're going to explore today. Not fantasy, not movie love, not social media love, not superficial love, not bullshit love. Real love, human love, the kind that people actually remember when life gets hard. And it's very hard to find. And I think this is where a lot of people get confused about love, because most of us were taught to think of love as a feeling. The butterflies, the chemistry, the attachment, the intensity, missing somebody, wanting somebody, needing somebody. But feelings change constantly. Real love is deeper than emotion. Real love is built through decisions, through consistency, through respect, through honesty, through protection, through trust. Real love creates safety. You shouldn't consistently feel anxious around somebody who truly loves you, and you shouldn't constantly feel disposable. You shouldn't constantly be guessing where you stand. You shouldn't constantly feel emotionally drained trying to earn basic care, attention, or reassurance. And I think a lot of people confuse emotional chaos with love because chaos is intense. But intensity and love are not always the same thing. Sometimes what people call love is really fear of abandonment, loneliness, trauma bonds, validation, or addiction to emotional highs and lows. And that's a dangerous thing, because people can spend years trapped inside cycles that slowly destroy their peace, their confidence, identity, and self-respect, while convincing themselves this must be love because I feel so much. But real love should not require you to lose yourself completely. Real love should push you towards becoming healthier, not more broken. And honestly, I think one of the most mature questions we can ask ourselves is not how strongly do I feel about this person, but what kind of a person am I becoming while connected to them? Because love should challenge us, but it should not slowly erase us. And that's where I think a lot of people listening today need to pause and really evaluate the relationships, the friendships, the environments, and the emotional cycles that they're attached to. And honestly, life has been putting this whole topic right in front of my face lately in a lot of different ways. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been helping organize a benefit for somebody, this guy Billy. He's fighting stage 4 cancer. And sitting in those meetings and talking to family and hearing stories and seeing people come together for somebody who's literally fighting for breath and fighting for time, it changes your perspective, and it makes you realize how fast life moves. We spend so much time distracted, angry, chasing nonsense, holding grudges, playing emotional games, assuming we have unlimited time with people. And meanwhile, there are people out there praying for one more year, one more month, one more day, and one more conversation. And that hits differently when you stop and think about it. And honestly, one thing that I've realized through my own experiences is a lot of people confuse waiting with love. I know I did. I know what it feels like to sit in emotional limbo, hoping things eventually make sense, hoping clarity comes, hoping consistency comes, hoping somebody figures themselves out, hoping love eventually becomes stable. And the truth is, though, I spent a long time believing that if I just held on tighter, stayed patient enough, loved harder, waited longer, or sacrificed more of myself, eventually everything would just work itself out. But what I learned the hard way is this. When you allow yourself to become a permanent waiting room for somebody else's confusion, you're not showing love to them anymore. You're not showing love to yourself either, but you are showing a complete lack of love towards yourself. And that realization hurts, because there's a difference between loving somebody and abandoning yourself emotionally, trying to hold on to something that is killing you. There's a difference between loyalty and slowly destroying your own peace while waiting for someone or something else to become emotionally available. And I know there are people listening right now who are sitting in that exact waiting room. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's a family situation. Maybe it's somebody constantly giving you mixed signals while you keep giving them chances, hoping that things will change. Is that you? Let my experience be your exit sign, because real love should not require you to disappear inside somebody else's instability. Love should be honest. Love should bring honesty. Love should bring effort. Love should bring consistency. Love should bring respect, not constant confusion. And I heard a story a little while back that really stayed with me. And honestly, I think it connects perfectly to this whole conversation about love, respect, and how we treat people. There was an old monastery that had fallen apart spiritually and emotionally. The monks living there had stopped appreciating one another. They argued constantly. They criticized each other. Nobody felt valued anymore. And the place had become cold, tense, and divided. And one day, a wise hermit visited the monastery, and before leaving, he told the head monk something strange. He said, "One of the people living amongst you is actually the Messiah in disguise." And then he left. And the monks were stunned, because now every single one of them started wondering, who is it? Could it be the old monk in the corner? Could it be the quiet one nobody notices? Could it be the difficult one? Could it be the one everybody overlooks? And because they didn't know who it was, they slowly began treating each other differently, with more patience, with kindness, with honor, with attention, and with respect. They started listening more carefully, speaking more gently, helping each other more often, and showing appreciation and giving grace. And over time, the monastery completely changed. And not because the Messiah appeared dramatically, but because they finally started treating each other like people who mattered. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest lessons about love. A lot of people spend years chasing validation from people who keep running away from them, while completely overlooking the people who consistently show up and care and support them and pray for them and listen to them and encourage them and stand beside them. And I've been thinking about a lot lately, because sometimes we become so emotionally focused on the people who confuse us that we stop appreciating the people who truly love us in healthy ways. The friend who checks on you, the parent who worries about you, the person who listens to your problems, the people helping organize a benefit for somebody sick. Maybe it's the friend that calls you every day just to make sure you're okay. The people who quietly stand beside you while life gets heavy. And I've lost both of my parents, so I don't have them to call. But if you do, I'm talking to you, not at you. And that's love too. Not flashy love, not chaotic love, not dramatic love, steady love. And honestly, steady love may be the most valuable kind there is, because at the end of life, most people will not remember who played emotional games with them. They're going to remember who stayed. That's what they will remember. And now I want to bring this back to a scripture for a minute, because one of the clearest descriptions of love is in 1 Corinthians 13. It's called the love chapter. A lot of people hear this at weddings, but I don't think the scripture is just about romance. I think it's about how love's supposed to behave. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres." And when you really slow down and break all those words apart, I was going to do that. I was going to dissect each word. I didn't want this podcast to go on too long. So it's honestly a completely different picture of love than most people experience in modern life. And one line that really stands out to me is, "Love does not dishonor others." Think about that. Real love protects dignity. It protects respect. It protects someone's spirit. It does not constantly humiliate people, manipulate people, embarrass people, confuse people, make them feel disposable, make them feel unworthy, talk down to them. Some people think they're better than others, and it makes other people feel terrible. It's not that. And I think a lot of people stay trapped in situations where they keep accepting dishonor because they're confusing attachment with love. That's what they're doing. I've done a lot of research on this. And when I researched all those words in that love chapter, wow, I could do a whole podcast on that chapter. But if a connection constantly destroys your peace, damages your self-respect, forces you to abandon your values, or leaves you emotionally broken all the time, or making you feel not yourself, and you have to be somebody you're not, then something is out of alignment. Because real love should not require you to compromise your soul to keep somebody around. Now, that doesn't mean love is always easy. Love requires sacrifice sometimes. It requires patience, forgiveness, growth, humility. But there's a difference between healthy sacrifice and emotional destruction. And there's a big difference between fighting for somebody meaningful and slowly losing yourself trying to hold yourself together for something unhealthy. And honestly, I think that's why this scripture matters so much, because it gives us a blueprint, not for perfect love, but for honest love. The kind of love that brings peace instead of constant chaos. The kind of love that protects instead of wounds. The kind of love that makes people feel safe instead of emotionally exhausted. I know somebody that told me they can't go 3 days without a fight with somebody. I'm like, if that's not a red flag, I don't know. And I think every one of us should occasionally stop and ask, does the way I love people bring healing into their life or confusion? I think it's a great thing to do. And honestly, I think sometimes we live in a world that's so loud, so distracted, and so emotionally chaotic that people rarely stop long enough to actually sit with their own thoughts. We scroll, we react, we argue, we chase distractions, we numb ourselves, we accept putting ourselves in situations we shouldn't be in, and we just say, maybe this is easier, and we just stay in it. But most of us, we almost never pause long enough to really ask ourselves, what kind of love am I giving? And what kind of love am I accepting? And who am I becoming? It's interesting how certain moments in life can stay with you. And sometimes somebody can just write something down casually, and later on, you realize there was a lot more emotion inside those words than you understood at the time. The title of this episode actually came from a handwritten list that somebody had wrote sitting beside me. And when I look back at the way those words are written, how to say nice things and how to show someone you love them, and I might do a third episode on the third thing they wrote down, but I honestly think those words weren't just podcast ideas. I think they were reflections of somebody trying to understand love, connection, pain, effort, hope, and human relationships in real time. And maybe that's part of why this episode matters, because sometimes people communicate things indirectly through conversations, through creativity, through moments, through suggestions, through emotions hidden between the lines. And sometimes we don't fully understand what somebody was trying to actually say until much later. Sometimes we think we're loving people well because of what we feel inside. But the people closest to our experience something completely different. And I think one of the hardest things a human being can do is honestly look in the mirror and ask, how do the people closest to me actually experience me? Do they experience peace, safety, consistency, patience, support, presence? Or do they experience chaos, distance, instability, selfishness, confusion, emotional unpredictability? Because love is not only measured by our intentions, it's also measured by our impact. And sometimes the people closest to us, our children, family, close friends, partners, it quietly reveal truths about us that we don't always want to face. And not because people are perfect, but because patterns leave marks on people. And I think real growth begins when we stop asking, do I feel love for people? And we start asking, do the people closest to me actually feel loved by me? And I think one of the hardest realities in life is a lot of people genuinely love somebody, but the other person never fully feels it. And not because the love wasn't real, but because it wasn't shown consistently enough. And I've thought about that a lot lately. How many times in life do we assume that they already know, there'll be more time, I'll say it later, I'll show it eventually. Meanwhile, the people around us are quietly wondering if they matter at all. And the older I get, the more I realize something. Love is really about giant, dramatic moments. Most of the time, people feel love through small little details. Phone call, being remembered, somebody noticing something small, showing up when it's inconvenient, checking in, listening carefully, remembering what somebody said 3 weeks ago, making time, consistency, things like that, little details. That's the stuff people carry with them. And honestly, I think that's why so many relationships, friendships, and even families slowly fall apart emotionally, because people stop feeling seen, not heard, not noticed, and not valued. And eventually, people stop listening to words because the actions stopped matching them a long time ago. People don't feel what you say once. They feel what you repeatedly do. And maybe that's the challenge for all of us moving forward. Not just loving people privately in our hearts, but learning how to make the people around us actually experience that love while we still have the chance. Because life changes fast. People leave. People drift. People get sick. People pass away. Moments close, and eventually you run out of opportunities to say, I should have shown it better. And thank God people have said to me what my kids have said about me when I wasn't there. And I think it's great, because there's nothing worse when your child does not think much about you, or if your child thinks ill of you, or doesn't think you support them, or they don't support you or your actions, or they think you're a certain type of person. You have to think about that, because when that's happening, you have to look in the mirror, because it's not what they're saying or thinking, it's what you're doing. So it's you. It's what you showed them, and it's what you've done and your examples and who you are. They see everything. So when your children don't have many nice things to say about you, that's probably a good wake-up call and a red flag. You probably have to finally change your ways and maybe start waking up and showing them what love really is. Love is not selfish. Go back to the scriptures we talked about. Love is all those things in the Corinthians chapter 13. Actions speak louder than words. You have to act on them and not just think them. Okay? Because if your kids are saying things about you and this is what they believe you are, it's probably true. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the clearest reflection of who we are comes from people closest to us. And if the people who know us best, our children, our family, and the people who live closest to our choices and behavior, are constantly describing us as selfish, unstable, dishonest, cruel, emotionally unavailable, or destructive, or worse things than that, at some point, we have to stop defending ourselves long enough to honestly take a look in that mirror. Because none of us are perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. But patterns leave emotional scars on people. And people will figure you out. And I think real growth begins when we stop asking, why is everybody saying this about me? And start asking, what experiences have I consistently created for the people around me? And why they're saying this? Because love is not just what we claim to feel internally. Love is what people repeatedly experience from us externally. And if people closest to us consistently feel hurt, dismissed, manipulated, abandoned, dishonored, or emotionally unsafe, then maybe it's time for an honest self-reflection instead of denial. Because showing people you love them isn't just about words. It's about the environment your behavior creates around other human beings. And up to this point, We talked a lot about the daily habits of love, the text messages, the chores, the quick words of appreciation. But I want to pause for a moment and look at what happens when love is stripped of all the easy stuff. What does love look like when there's absolutely nothing left to gain from it? So I came across this beautiful story. It was told by a physician that completely redefined how I view the word devotion. It starts from a busy medical clinic early one morning. Sit back and listen to this story. A physician was sitting in a busy clinic waiting room early one morning. He noticed an elderly man well into his late 80s. He walked through the front doors. The man was dressed neatly, but he seemed anxious, checking his watch every few seconds. The doctor watched as the old man walked up to the receptionist and asked if his appointment could be rushed. He explained that he was in a hurry because he had somewhere else he absolutely had to be at 9 o'clock a.m. The doctor, feeling a pang of empathy for the man's anxiety, decided to step in. He grabbed the man's chart, saw that his vital signs were stable, and led him into the exam room. As he was treating a small wound on the man's hand, the doctor looked at his watch and smiled. "You must have another very important doctor's appointment this morning," he said. "You seem so worried about the time." The old man shook his head, looked down at his hands, and said, "Nope, not a doctor's appointment. Just every morning at 9 a.m., I go to the nursing home down the road to eat breakfast with my wife." So the doctor asked about her health. The man softly explained that she had been placed there quite a while ago because she was suffering from severe advanced Alzheimer's disease. Curious, the doctor asked, "Will she be upset or worried if you're a few minutes late?" And the old man looked up. His eyes were clear, but filled with a quiet sadness. He replied, "No. She hasn't known who I am for 5 years now. She doesn't recognize my face, and she doesn't remember my name." So the doctor was stunned. He stopped what he was doing. He looked at the old man, and he said, "And you still go every single morning? You still build your entire life around showing up for her at 9 a.m., even though she has no idea who you are?" The old man smiled gently. He patted the doctor's hand and gave him an answer that defines true, unconditional love. He said, "She doesn't know me, but I still know who she is." What a story, huh? She doesn't know me, but I still know who she is. Let that sink in for a second. We live in a world that tells us that love is a transaction. We're taught to give only when we receive. We measure relationships by how happy the other person makes us feel in that moment. But this story, it proves that true love isn't a reaction to how someone treats us today. True love is a decision. It's an active commitment to show up, to sit at the table, and to honor another person's dignity, even when they have nothing left to give you back. And as you go about your week, ask yourself, how can I show up for people in my life? And not because of what they do for me, but simply because of who they are to me. And just let that sit with you for a second. She doesn't know who I am anymore, but I still know who she is. And as I said, that line completely changed the way I look at love. Because of this world I said we live in, that's what people do, right? They measure love by what they receive back from somebody, or how much attention they get, how appreciated they feel, or how someone treats them in the moment. But this story, it shifts the entire perspective of love away from what we receive and places it completely on what we choose to give. Real love is not always a reaction to how someone treats us today. Sometimes real love is a decision, a commitment, a willingness to continue honoring somebody who has been to your heart and in your heart, even when life gets hard, and even when life gets complicated, painful, or unfair. That old man still showed up every single morning, not because he was getting something back, but because love had become part of who he was. And honestly, I think that's one of the purest definitions of love I've ever heard in my life. It's just a tremendous story, and it defines this whole episode of how to show someone you love them. I just wanted to share that with you. And so for the next few minutes, I want to do something a little bit different. Music has always been one of the ways that I process life. And sometimes music just says things that words can't fully reach. And lately I just haven't had drive and motivation with music, but every now and then you got the song either that you wrote. I don't want to call myself a songwriter, but I do write songs, and sometimes I listen to those songs, and sometimes I hear another unique song that's attached to me. And just like I said, it just says things that words can't fully reach. So I'm going to let this guitar piece play for a few minutes. And while it's playing, I just want you to sit with everything that we talked about tonight. So I'm going to let this guitar piece play for a few minutes. And while it's playing, I want you to just sit with everything that we just talked about today. Think about the people who truly show up for you. Think about the people that you may have taken for granted. Think about the people who need more of your presence instead of just your words. And maybe think about whether there are relationships, habits, or emotional cycles in your life that are draining your peace instead of strengthening your spirit. No distractions for a minute. No scrolling. No noise. Just breathe, listen, and reflect. So I want you to sit back for a few minutes, clear the noise from your mind, gather your thoughts, and reflect on the people in your life and how love is actually shown. Sit back, breathe, and allow yourself to really process everything we talked about today. And I'll be back in a few minutes. That little guitar piece is something I wrote. It's a song that I wrote, and it's an instrumental. Has no words. Okay, so I hope if you had the time to actually listen to that instrumental and focus and relate to everything that I just was talking about. We talked about 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, the great love chapter. It lays out the beautiful blueprint of what love is. It's patient, kind, it doesn't envy, doesn't boast. That's the character of love, but how do we actually put legs on that definition? If you look at 1 John 3:18, Scripture challenges us. It says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and truth." And Paul reminds us in Ephesians 4:32 to be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. So you see, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us what love looks like, but verses like these tell us how to deliver it. And it's a reminder that love isn't just a feeling we talk about. It's a standard that we live through our daily choices, our compassion, and our actions. And I think that's why Proverbs says, guard your heart. I came across this poem recently, and it hit me hard because I think a lot of us confuse holding on with strength. And the poem is called The Brave Choice. This poem captures that feeling when you try too hard to be strong for everyone else. This is it. In this poem, The Brave Choice, this poem, to me, it captures a feeling when you're trying too hard to be strong for everyone else. Hold on, hold on, hold on, they said. You're a dandelion in the breeze. Look what the winds of change have done to all these autumn leaves. So I held on, held on, held on. They said that's how you know you're strong, but not until I wilted did I notice something wrong. I thought holding on was bravery, but when the winds of change do blow, sometimes it's even braver still to let go, let go, let go. And that doesn't mean stop loving people. Sometimes it means learning how to love without destroying yourself. And you know, I often say that music has a unique way of saying what words alone simply cannot express. When we look at the people in our lives and try to figure out how to show them they truly matter, human language can fall short. But a melody, a chord, or a lyric, it can pierce right through our defenses and speak straight to the heart. So love isn't just a declaration, it's a daily action. And to help carry this message with you into your week, I put together a complete playlist linked right below in the description. I've included tracks like Extremes More Than Words, which challenges us to prove our love through actions, and Mac Powell's Love Out Loud, which is an anthem about putting our faith into motion. There are over a dozen songs on this list, both Christian and secular, that will remind you what it means to show up for the people who matter. So I encourage you to click on that link, listen to these songs this week, and let the music inspire your actions as we pray to close out today's episode. I want to leave you with a few real, practical things that you can actually carry into your everyday life. Because at the end of the day, love is not something that we talk about, it's something we practice. The first one is this. Show love through presence. Be there when it counts, not just when it's convenient, and not when life is easy, and not just when somebody is entertaining or fun to be around. Sometimes the greatest thing you can give somebody is your actual presence during the moments that they feel alone, overwhelmed, grieving, anxious, or forgotten. A phone call matters. Showing up matters. Listening matters. Sitting beside someone quietly matters. My friend, whose aunt just passed away, had such a horrible, I don't want to say horrible, because he got to spend the last month or so with his aunt, who he loves dearly. He's wept over her brutally and has broken his heart because she passed away. But when I said sitting beside somebody quietly matters, he told me that when she passed away, he was with her and she was just laying there. He was saying, hopefully comfortable. And she passed away while he was holding her hand. and it just crushed my heart. And remember, people remember who stayed. And second, show love through boundaries. And I know that one makes some people uncomfortable, but it's so true. You cannot love people well if you are constantly allowing your own peace, your own dignity, and your mental health and self-respect to be destroyed in the process. Boundaries are not hatred. They're not cruelty. Boundaries are wisdom. Sometimes saying no is healthy, and sometimes stepping back is healthy. Sometimes protecting your spirit is necessary. And sometimes getting out of a situation and leaving and not feeling guilty or regret or anything because of maybe it could be possibly manipulation or somebody making you feel bad. Don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. Because in the long run, the truth will come out. And if you don't set boundaries now, you're just prolonging it, and it's going to hurt more later. So just think about that. Sit with that. And think about you if you're in a situation. Think about that. And no matter what situation you're in, because everyone's unique. I know someone who had to leave their home because somebody in the home was pretty much abusing them. And they had to leave. And they had to move out. And they're in a tough situation now. But you know what? They did the right thing. Because staying would have just made it worse. And as tough as it's going to be, they will benefit in the long run. You have to get out of situations that are not healthy. And you can fight it and fight it. And just think that things are going to change, or hopefully things will fall into place. But I hate to tell you this, it doesn't. And I was talking to a therapist, and the therapist said something interesting. We were talking about a certain situation, and she said this. She said, diapers are cute, right? They make these diapers with all these little cute things on them, and you look at a little baby, the diaper looks cute. But you know what? The diaper gets shit in it. And if somebody is wearing a diaper, it looks cute on the outside. But you know what? If it's got a lot of shit in that diaper and they don't want to change the diaper, let them sit in the diaper. Let them sit in this shit. This is exactly what she said. And I was like, wow. So I know it's a little brutal, but it was a great analogy. And finally, show love through consistency. Make sure that your Tuesday matches your Friday. Don't play hot and cold games with people emotionally. And don't make people feel valued one week and then invisible the next week. And don't tell people that you care while your actions constantly communicate distance, confusion, or indifference. And I'm not saying don't hang in there, because if somebody cares about you and it just doesn't look right and it looks really bad, it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. And I'm not saying that whatever situation you're in, whether it's a parent with a child or a child with a parent or a friend or losing a best friend, a friendship, or even a relationship, all I'm saying is consistency builds trust. Consistency builds safety. Consistency builds emotional security. And honestly, in a world full of mixed signals and emotional chaos, consistency may be one of the purest forms of love that's left. So, if you love someone in your heart, hang on to that love. You don't have to let it go. You can love from a distance. You really can. And like I've said over and over, I always believe in divine intervention. And when I had a woman come up to me that hadn't talked to her child in 15 years, said she was going to call them because she heard something in my forgiveness podcast. It's 15 years. But you know what? She's reconciled, or she's trying to. And I think that's awesome. And I know somebody that's related to a family member of mine. Same thing happened to them. They were married for years, and the husband did some wrong stuff they actually got divorced. And she went on, she moved on with her life, and she found somebody. I don't remember if he got married. I don't think he did. And then it was a few years. And you know what? Two roads led them right back together. She ended up divorcing this guy. She realized the grass was not greener on the other side. And it wasn't as bad as she thought. It was a lot simpler, as she said. And they got back together, and they've been married for many years. And she says it's so much better than she could have imagined. And so I just wanted to say that because, as I said, in peaks and valleys, in the valleys, that's where the purest soil is. And at the peak, nothing can be at the peak without it starting in that dirt and growing. So just think about that. So if you're down in that valley, or you've been in the valley for a long time, just remember, valleys are where the soil is the richest. Nothing grows on the peak of a mountain. It's too windy and it's too cold. Everything grows in the valley. So today, I want to pray for every person listening who feels emotionally tired, mentally overwhelmed, heartbroken, confused, or quietly carrying a pain that they don't even know how to explain anymore. And I also want to add the people that are trying to show how to love more. There's a lot of people asking that question. All of us want to receive love, don't we? But it's better to give than to receive. We have to learn how to give it as well, don't we? So let's take these melodies, let's take these thoughts, and let's bring our hearts together as we go to God in prayer. So Heavenly Father, we come before you today with hearts open and ready to learn how to love better. Lord, your word reminds us that we shouldn't just love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. You didn't just tell us, you loved us. You showed us through your grace, your compassion, and your ultimate sacrifice on the cross. Forgive us for the times we let words be enough, or the times we get too busy to notice the people that you have placed right in front of us. Help us to slow down and to give us eyes to see the hidden hurts in others, and ears to listen to what is being said, and hearts that are quick to forgive just as you forgave us. Teach us to love out loud. Let our lives be living proof of your kindness. May the people in our homes, our workplaces, and our communities feel deeply that they matter simply because of how we choose to treat them. Protect the listeners this week. Fill them with your peace and give them the strength to be your hands and feet. So Lord, there are people listening tonight who feel invisible, people who feel abandoned, people who have spent so much time trying to love others that they forgot how to love themselves. I pray for the people trapped in toxic cycles. I pray for people constantly questioning their worth. The people accepting confusion because they're afraid of loneliness. The people staying in places that slowly crush their spirit because they don't know how to let it go. Please give them clarity. Give them wisdom to recognize the difference between healthy love and emotional chaos and superficial love. Give them the courage to walk away from environments, habits, relationships, and patterns that are destroying their peace. And Lord, for the people who feel broken tonight, remind them that broken does not mean worthless. Help them heal, help them breathe again, help them rediscover joy again. Help them remember who they are outside of pain, rejection, disappointment, and fear. And teach us how to love people honestly. Those who are looking to love, who are asking the question, how do I love? Some people just don't, so please give them that clarity. Teach them, and teach them how to forgive wisely, how to protect their hearts without becoming cold, and how to build lives rooted in truth, dignity, peace, and compassion. And for anybody else listening today who feels like giving up on themselves, I pray that they understand that healing takes time, growth takes time, and peace is still possible even after difficult seasons. So thank you for every lesson every open door, every person who truly shows up for us, and every opportunity to become a better human being moving forward. In Jesus' precious holy name, amen. And before we close tonight, I just want to leave you with this. Season 3 of Cracked Open is really about forward motion, not perfection, not pretending life doesn't hurt, not acting like we have everything figured out, but growth, clarity, healing, wisdom, helping, loving more, and being able how to accept being loved by the right people, not the wrong ones. And also learning how to move forward without carrying every broken thing from the past into the future. And honestly, one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning is this. Love should not have to be decoded constantly. If somebody truly loves you, respects you, and values you, and wants you in their life, eventually it will show through consistent, unprompted, unmistakable action. Not confusion, not endless mixed signals, not emotional guessing games, not one-sided effort, not constant instability, not the feeling that you get when you know that you're lying to yourself. Because real love shows up. And I think a lot of people listening today need to stop begging for crumbs in places where they deserve consistency, honesty, effort, peace, and respect. You have more power than you think you do. And you have the power to change your environment too. You have the power to protect your peace. You have the power to stop entertaining cycles that are crushing your spirit. And you have the power to rebuild your life one decision at a time. And that word, decision, this is where it comes down to. Choices you're making and decisions you're making. You have both of those, decisions and choices, that you have to make. And sometimes you've made wrong ones, but it doesn't mean you can't fix them. And you don't stay in that diaper, as I said. You can take the diaper off and clean it up and put a fresh one on. And maybe most importantly, you have the power to become the kind of person who shows love the right way yourself. Through action, loyalty, through honesty, through presence, through integrity. Because at the end of the day, people may forget words, but they never forget how somebody consistently made them feel. Thank you guys for walking through this conversation with me today. If this episode connected with you in some way, if it helped you reflect, heal, maybe reevaluate your life, or feel a little bit less alone, share it with somebody else who may need it. Because you know there's people out there who need it. There's a lot of hurting people and a lot of people who've been just thrown away. So think of those people as well. And there are a lot of people out there silently carrying these heavy things. So take care of your spirit, protect your peace, show love through your actions, and never forget your value just because somebody else failed to recognize it. And as we move through season 3 together, remember, this season is about growth, it's about clarity, it's about healing, and it's about continuing to move forward even after difficult chapters in life. And if you're not going through a difficult chapter, you can still move forward and take everything you hear and help somebody who may be going through a difficult chapter. So it could benefit you that way. So I appreciate every single one of you for the continued support, the messages, the shares, and the conversations. And I just keep getting more knowledge and wisdom through people because I've learned a lot in the last few days of my life that listening is so much more important than talking. And I guess if there's one thing I'm realizing lately, it's that love is a lot more complicated than most of us think. Sometimes love means showing up. Sometimes it means staying. Sometimes it means fighting for people. Sometimes it means forgiveness. But sometimes love also means boundaries. Sometimes it means stepping back. And as I said before, sometimes it just means trusting God with the whole situation. Love isn't always words. Sometimes love is presence. Sometimes it's patience and sacrifice. and boundaries. Another thing is we act like we have forever with people until suddenly we don't, because life can change in the snap of a finger. But I'm learning that sometimes love and wisdom have to coexist. That Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart. Let that sit with you. Go back and read it. And sometimes love means just stepping back and trusting God. Sometimes the hardest act of love is releasing somebody into God's hands, because you realize you can't control their journey. They're going to have to learn on their own, and they're going to have to suffer. And I don't want pain to turn me into somebody who stops loving people altogether. And I know you don't either. So don't let bitterness or what things you can't control steer the ship. Don't let it. Sometimes the greatest way to show somebody you love them is just be present while you still can. Thank you guys for listening today. If this episode connected with you in any way, I hope you all share it with somebody that may need to hear this. And this week, try to show somebody you love them, not just with words, but with your time, your presence, your patience, your forgiveness, your honesty, and your actions. Life moves real fast. People are hurting quietly, and none of us really know how much time we all have with each other. So I appreciate everybody who continues to support Cracked Open, support my podcast, send messages. Thanks for walking through all these conversations with me, and remember that your integrity is your legacy. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Karma has no favorites, and it works both ways, good and bad. And God has no favorites. So this is Glen Nunes signing off. I love you guys. Thank you for being here, and keep moving forward. I'll see you next week on Cracked Open. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Cracked Open. If today's episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need a little light in their own dark season. Remember, even in brokenness, there's beauty waiting to be found. Every crack is a place where the light can shine through. Until next time, stay true, stay hopeful, and keep your heart open.